Now excited to be joined by a very special guest, a first-time guest. It is Pat Dooley. Pat, this is a home and home of sorts between us after I went on your show,
Yeah.
another duly noted podcast, and we discussed a ton of different Florida topics. So a little podcasting trick was that you basically just gave me all the good ideas for questions to ask you. So thank you for doing that.
That's what I'm here for.
Let's start with the question that I think will define Florida's season. It's perhaps maybe the biggest agent of chaos, not just in the SEC, but really in the entire college football season. If you want to break down what it means for Billy Napier, the coaching carousel, all those different things. How healthy will DJ Lagway's shoulder be once fall camp starts in about 5 weeks?
I don't think it'll be a problem at all. In fact, but you never know. He gets hit in it, in a game. I mean, don't forget, they lost Graham Mertz for the year when he was diving for a first down against Missouri, and he got hit in the shoulder. He's done, and it cost them that year. You never know, and especially once you've had a shoulder injury. It's not just his shoulder, though. He's had lower body is what they're calling it, but we all know that there's been something going on with his groin. But that was the whole point of shutting him down in the spring, was to say, DJ, we got a program here, and you're going to be ready to go in June, and you're going to be able to do everything you need to do in June, and that's going to set us up, but it's going to mean you miss throwing in spring. That's the plan they took. Hopefully it works. It appears to be working right now, but, it's the same old thing we saw with Anthony Richardson, an unbelievable athlete, but he couldn't stay healthy. He was always getting hurt. And because they're physically impressive players who tried to get maybe a little more out of things. So that's going to be the question, because I think Lagway is an underrated runner, to be honest with you, if he wants to go. But then I'm like, well, don't run unless you can slide.
And the tricky thing is, last year we saw what he was able to do with the hamstring apparatus, and he still, within those limitations, was highly effective and made some big time throws that felt like confirmation bias for all the hype that he came with, going into Florida. Everything that we saw last year suggested this guy can be all of those things and then some. But I do find myself asking this: have we overhyped Lagway? Or is saying that he has legitimate Heisman upside a fair thing at this point of his career?
I think both those things are true, to be honest with you, because I do think I think Lagway has gotten a lot of hype for one reason, and that's because he's been committed to Florida since his senior year of high school and been getting NIL money from Florida since his senior year of high school. And when he came in, everybody was excited. They were ready to bump Mertz out. But, of course, we all knew that wasn't going to happen because Mertz knew the offense and was an effective quarterback. And Graham Mertz had a great, he couldn't throw the ball as far, but he was a good quarterback. But, Lagway's got different skill set, and it's certainly a skill set that I know a lot of NFL guys are looking at. But at the same time, they don't want another Anthony Richardson. They don't want somebody who comes in and gets hurt all the time. So that's going to be the thing. And I think that is where his camp is really worried about word getting out about injuries and stuff, because they don't want it to hurt his pro career. But on the other hand, if Lagway plays like he played against LSU and Ole Miss to end the season last year, could he be in the Heisman mix? Absolutely. Spurrier made some waves on my podcast on Monday because he said Arch Manning's already got the Heisman. Why didn't he start last year? Why did they start Quinn Ewers all those games? Of course, the Texas people are freaking out. But my thing is with Lagway is I think he's a smart enough, good enough kid to be able to put all that stuff behind him. It's just if he can stay healthy, and you know this. I mean, if Harrison Bailey's their quarterback, everything's out the window. You're talking about a non-starter, 6-year player who was not a non-starter. I mean, he started a couple of games, but not many. So they got to keep him healthy. There's no doubt about it.
It's Florida's best offseason vibe since 2000, probably post 2018. Even with the Lagway, weirdness with the injury and all that stuff. You could say, the program was in better shape after 2019, but everything that happened after that after the 2019 season with COVID, with the Mullen contract, there was just a lot of stuff behind the scenes with Florida that was pretty unsettling and just kind of weird. If a vibe killing 3-3 start awaits this team, which I think you look at the schedule and go, that's really not crazy. They could be underdogs
Oh yeah.
in maybe 3 of those games, or perhaps even 4 of those games in the first half of the schedule. If that happens, what will be the culprit?
Well, it'll be because they have a track record for not getting off to fast starts, and that is a concern. The Miami game last year was an embarrassment. And my thing is, their whole thing was that they turned the season around during the open week when they had full practices and competed and everything. I'm like, well, why don't you do that in the fall? That's what you're supposed to be doing in the fall. But I think in the fall, it's all about install and timing and everything. Look, they play in a row, although there's a bye week in there. They got to play at LSU, who has a potential Heisman Trophy first-round pick. I'm not saying he's going to be, but Nessmeyer could be. Then you play a $4 million quarterback at Miami, and then you play the probable Heisman winner, an Arch Manning, at home against Texas. That's a 3-game run that is brutal. If you can get through that somehow 2-1, you're off. If you go through it 1-2, people are going to wonder, and they're going to get the hot seat talk will get you go 0-3, which is very possible. Now the hot seat. Now I'm getting the calls from McElroy like I got last year saying, "Who's the next coach going to be?" And I go, "They still got a coach," but everybody was calling me saying, "All right, we know Napier's gone. What do you think they'll do next? Who do you think they'll bring in next?" I'm like, I'm going to wait, let him finish this out. Just me.
What was the most what was, besides McElroy, what was the most noteworthy call that you had? Because it's like you're obviously very, very connected, and there's a certain level of expectation that if Scott Strickland isn't going to be available to answer that question, then you certainly are. What was somebody that called you up and was like, "Hey, what does it look like?" Because I'm sure there were plenty of Florida alums that were in your DMs or just blowing you up for that information.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of those guys, and a lot of times it would be I would get somebody to come on my podcast, might be a sports writer, might be a former Gator player, somebody like that, and the entire pre-interview questions would be about: Is he gone? You think he's going to get gone? He's going to get fired? What do you hear? And I go, I think he's going to be okay, but let him finish it out and see where it goes. And of course, he finished it out and it went good, but I got to say this: 8-5. If we're celebrating that in Gainesville, that's not good. I mean, that is where this is the biggest year in Billy Napier's career. It really is. He has got his best roster together. This is the roster he put together over a 4-year period through the portal, through recruiting. They've spent a fortune on it. We all know that. They've got 600 guys wearing polo shirts. They've got. This is a year you've got to move it from the Heavener facility, the big facility they built, which is great. You've got to move it from there over to the stadium, and you've got to make it work in the stadium. And it hasn't worked all the time in the stadium. And certainly the beginning of last year, when they get throttled by Miami and Texas A&M, that was a bad look for Billy Napier. You can't have that. And that 3-game run, you can't have that 3-game run be bad. That's the bottom line.
Speaking of off-season vibes, you're being interviewed for a new film on just maybe the weirdest vibes possible that kicked off the start of the Spurrier era. And if you're from my generation, this is a story that I don't know that a lot of people fully remember unless you experienced it. And it had nothing to do with on-field issues. It had everything to do with a horrifying on-campus tragedy in Gainesville in 1990. Tell people about this because, like I said, unless you lived it like you did when you were there, you probably don't remember it.
Yeah, it's a very weird time in my life because I had become sports editor in '87, late '87. Emmett's second game, I think, was when I came in. And then we went through the whole Galen, Norm Sloan, NCAA's in town. We had a spotlight team, that was concentrating on it. And then these murders happened, and the spotlight team was in the middle of it, and they were all good friends of mine. So I was hearing all the stories when they would come back from talking to the cops privately. And I was freaked out. I got to be. I stayed up all night one night with a bat, just with a bat in my hands like this, and because I had a daughter and my wife at home, and so it was a weird time here. And also during that time, this is the weird part. We had suspended Jack Harston for something that had to do with he had an age discrimination suit going against us from writing columns. So I had to write the column that day. And I told all our guys, be careful what you write today. Don't forget, we're covering a football game. And let's not get into too much of, she would have been
5 murders, 5 people killed in a 4-day stretch in Gainesville in August, like leading up to the start of the season. They still decide to play this football game on a Saturday, which I don't know that game gets played in 2025 with what was going on and how horrific that was for the Florida community.
Well, not only that, Connor, the guy was still out there. I mean, it wasn't like they had caught anybody. They caught a guy that turned out was totally innocent. He was just a nut. And so that was the thing. And there was an uneasiness about the whole day. How much are we supposed to have fun? Are we supposed to sit here and tailgate like we always do? You get into the stadium and you're like, I don't know how excited I'm allowed to be. But then, of course, the Florida offense just goes up and down the field. It's a new thing. And everybody kind of came out of there going, I think I'm happy again, but we still had a killer on the loose in Gainesville. So it was just an odd, weird time. And I actually am glad that they're doing this 30 for 30 on it. And because it is an interesting story about a weird time. And, Coach Spurrier said to all the players, go, you can go with your girlfriends and stay at their place. And if you feel like you need to protect them and stuff like that, that's where we were. And these guys are supposed to keep their mind on the first game they're playing for Steve Spurrier. But obviously, Oklahoma State wasn't very good that
year. I went back yesterday and watched a bunch of old clips about this story. And I think what, can be lost in it is obviously the nature, the very graphic nature of the crimes that were committed. You would think, all right, this is, a guy that's targeting petite females, a monster targeting petite females. And then you hear, well, he stabbed this guy who basically looked like a football player as well and killed him en route to another one of his victims. And I just wonder the psyche of what that was like for a football team who, yes, you have this air of invincibility at the time. And you're thinking nothing can hurt us. We're good. We'll handle ourselves against a potential predator. That's what we're born to do. But what has Spurrier told you about how he handled that and how he handled that uneasiness that set in at basically the worst possible time, like late August, just as everybody's ramping up and singularly focused, or at least supposed to be singular focused on this very new era of Florida football?
Yeah, I mean, for him, he was like everybody. He was worried about the women that were out there. And that's why he was telling his players, go ahead and stay. You don't have to stay. This is back when they had dorms, Yon Hall. You don't have to stay there. You can go stay with your girlfriends. But there was this kind of level of, are we even going to have this game played, like you said? And the funny thing is, I was trying to remember how much discussion there was whether the game would be played. And it felt like it was pretty dismissed pretty quickly about not playing the game, that they were going to play it and there would be a chance to everybody to get together. And but also, look, it's financial is an issue there too. There's no question about it. And people had made plans and the place was packed for that game. So, but once game day started for Steve, it was game day, and he was able to. He's pretty good about compartmentalizing things. So he was able, and I talked to him about this. He goes, once the game started, we were trying not to think about those kind of things and just going forward. The trouble is when the game ended and you kind of walked away from there, you're going, that guy could have been in the stands. I don't even know if he might have been. I don't know if he could afford to go to the game, but he might have been there. He might be at one of the tailgates. Who knows who was doing this? So that was the weird part about that.
robbed a bank.
Yeah.
Maybe he had funds there, but then there was the red die cap that went off
Yeah.
that one of the bank tellers very smartly put in this bag, and they were able to use that as a way to later identify this this serial killer that was on the loose. Changing gears a little bit here, because I think the Spurrier era, which you've covered in so many different ways, over the course of your time in Gainesville, but I always wonder if there was a moment that you witnessed, or maybe that Spurrier told you about, where he realized, oh, this is going to work. Was it just simply that first season of navigating all those challenges and having a team that went in, even though they're facing NCAA violations and all that, you can't play in a bowl game, but they go into that last game against Florida State just with one loss, with all the different things that were in their way. Was that the moment, or was there another moment when Spurrier realized things are going to work out just fine at his alma mater?
Well, he'll tell you, and he's told me a million times, that Alabama game early in the season, Florida goes to Alabama. They're not supposed to win that game. Nobody thinks they're going to win that game, and they win with defense. And Spurrier knew he had a great defense. They had a scrimmage right before the season, and everybody, all the media boys that were out there, and Jack was one of them, were saying, I don't think this offense is going to work, Steve. And he's like, you don't realize we have a great defense. It's not working against this defense, and nobody else is going to be able to work their offense against this defense. And so they go to Alabama, and they win that game. I think it was 17-13. And the locker room just exploded. The coaches all now believe. The players all now believe. Because Florida's not supposed to go into Alabama and win a game, and they'd done it, and they were freaking out. And from that gave them the confidence, even with this probation, which was not fair. I mean, they shouldn't have gotten penalized for Galen Hall giving somebody some money. But once that happened, they believed. Now, they had that bump in the road in Knoxville. They went up there, and they were down 7-3 at the half, and Dale Carter runs a opening kickoff back all the way, and they end up winning 45-3. But, I mean, that was the only real blip in that season, because it was pretty special to see that offense go. And then the next year, when you start recruiting even better players, and you get better offensive guys in there, and it just took off from there.
What's your favorite Spurrier story ever? Or maybe one that doesn't get told enough, because Lord knows there are so many that are out there. I've joked that I'd like to just do a book of Spurrier stories and just shorts from 50 to 75 people who could tell these stories. I'm sure you could probably put that book together right now. I mean, literally just put it on shelves and just copy and paste some of the old files. But what's one that always comes to mind when people ask you that question?
Well, there's two. So if you can give me two, I'll get. I love these two stories. One is, and we tell this story a lot. He is. There's a new guy from the Alligator. He's coming to cover the team for the first time. He loved the Gators. He cared about them. Big guy, and so he waits for Steve to come up the hill after doing all his interviews. He goes, "Hey, Coach, my name's Matt. I am going to be covering the team this year for the Alligator." And he goes, "All right, Matt." And he goes, by the way, Coach, in high school or in college, you dated my mom for a while. And he looks him up and down and goes, "Your mom? No way." So, that was a good one. Then the one I played golf.
Wait, was he right though? Did he actually date his mom?
I don't know. We never found that out. We need to find it, and we need to find out what she looked like in college too.
True.
He just assumed that she had to be a big girl, I think, because this guy was big. But the other one is when I played golf with him up in Washington. He had gotten a job. They sent me up there, and in typical Spurrier fashion, because has treated me so unbelievable in my life, he organized a little golf tournament for me. And I was about to go have prostate surgery, so he knew what was going on and everything. So we're playing. I'm playing pretty good. We get to the last hole, and I crush a drive right down the middle. He goes, you got to go for it now, Pat. I said, "All right, Coach." We'll get up there. We get up to the hole, and I go, "Where's the green?" I don't see the green. He goes, "Oh, it's just right around the corner, right behind those trees. You see a little draw. You'll be putting for an eagle. It's par 5. I go, "Okay, cool." So I hit it. I go, "Is that on, Coach?" I don't see it. And he goes, "No, it's in the water." I said, "Water? You didn't tell me there was water up there." He goes, "I'm going to lay up, I think." So he lays up, makes a birdie. I make a bogey. I have to give him the $20. I'm like, he is what he is. He's the best. I will say this. I am so glad. If you had told a 14-year-old boy or 12-year-old boy that one day I was going to be doing a podcast with Steve Spurrier every day, every Monday, I would have said, well, I did something good in my life, because having him on is such a pleasure. It is. You just give him topics and he goes, and it's hilarious.
I'm always curious about the sliding doors in college football, and Lord knows there are plenty of those with Spurrier. I do find myself wondering if there was anything that could have kept him at Florida after 2001. You know, they lose the rescheduled Tennessee game because of 9/11. And, you know, I do wonder, like, if they had won that game against Tennessee and maybe played for a national championship, would that have kept him there? Or was it just time and it didn't really matter the result of one game? Like, was there anything that maybe could have kept him in Gainesville and not made 2001 his last season?
Hindsight is about the only thing that would, because he wanted to go to the NFL. He wanted to give it a try. He had done it in college. He'd won a national title. He had been approached by the Saints, the Bucks. I'm trying to think of all the teams there were all these different teams that approached him, and he almost took a couple of those jobs, but he turned them down. The Bucks was the one he was ready to take it, but then he thought about it when he got up in the morning, decided not to. But the bottom line was he wanted to go to the NFL. In hindsight, when he's told me this before, he should have just stayed where he was. He loved it here and everything, and wanted to get back into college and wanted the Florida job, 3 years later when they were looking for a new coach and Florida didn't want him. So he didn't appreciate that, I can tell you that. But no, I don't think there was anything that anybody could have done to keep him here. He really wanted to go. If they had won that game, he might have gone out with another national championship and gone, now I'm sailing into the sunset. But more than anything, the president at the time, John Lombardi, had said to him, 10 years is enough anywhere for anybody. And they were just having a conversation. And I think once Spurrier got to that 11 years, he started thinking, all right, it's time for me to go and try it, see what I can do in the NFL. Now, again, he picked the wrong team, the wrong owner. It did not work out.
Are the 2000s better, worse, or the same for Florida if Spurrier had stayed there, not gone to the NFL, not done the South Carolina thing? The Zook era never happens. The Urban era never happens. If he had just said, my entire coaching career, through 2000, I guess into 2015, if you want to say, if he had just spent that time in Florida, what does the 2000s look like for the Gators?
Well, the thing is, I can't see it being better because of the two championships. And I don't think, Urban was a relentless recruiter, and I don't think all those players, the key was Tebow. And let me tell you what, Steve. Steve's not going to go to Tim Tebow and recruit him the way Urban Meyer did. Steve's going to go, well, you can go to Alabama. We'll beat you there. But who knows? Tebow still might have come here. Tebow loved the Gators, loved Danny Werfel's family met there, but he was close to going to Alabama. Anyway, to win it in 06 and 08, get a Heisman in 07, have an undefeated season in 09 until you got to the SEC title game. It's hard for me to see it that it would have been better, but it would have been interesting. That's for sure. And that would be the other thing is, would Steve have left coaching a little bit earlier? Because let's say he stays at Florida and coaches until 2010 or something like that. He might have gotten to a point where he goes, I'm ready to sit out. And he didn't want to be a CEO. He did not want to be a Bobby Bowden kind of guy who, you got ready for the game and then they turned his sound off in his headphones so you didn't have to hear anything. So he didn't want to be that guy. And he told me that 100 times. I want to be calling plays. If I'm not calling plays, there's no point in me being a coach.
It's crazy, though, to think even in 2019, I remember being at his debut in the AAF when he's here coaching the Orlando Apollos, and he's still dialing up these looks. And I remember going to that post-game press conference thinking, like, man, that guy could be 6 feet under, and I would still bank on him to be able to dial up offensive looks that put up 35 points. And some guys just always have it. And I do think he would have adapted to modern offenses. I think he's shown an ability to do that, even though he clearly got burnt out by the time that he quit midseason at South Carolina. But, I do wonder, could he have worked with Tebow? Could he have really worked with those styles? Because Urban is just so perfect for what Tebow was as a
Right.
quarterback. Could we have seen Tebow in the fun and gun actually put up those types of numbers?
It's an interesting question. And here's the thing. When he eventually at South Carolina went to that kind of offense, remember Connor Shaw, they would run a lot of option stuff and run him as a running quarterback and had a lot of success, won 11 games with him. So, yeah, I think he could have adapted to that. If Tebow had come here, he would have adjusted things. But, he's such a stickler for throwing motions and stuff like that. And Tebow had that wind up. Well, I need to do it left-handed. Wind up like he'd throw a baseball all the time, and that's why he had trouble in the pros. So I think Tebow would have gotten benched by Spurrier. I'll say that, and that would have been a story right there. But it would have been interesting to see how that worked out. But Spurrier has taught me one thing about football, and that is that there's a play that will work against every defense. Now you got to figure out what the defense is, and once you figure that out, you've got to play for it. And as long as they execute it, it'll work. And he's right. I watch football now, and I go, if they play zone here, and you do this, it's going to hit big. And sure enough, it does. So he has taught me more about football than anybody else in the world.
You've spent so much time dissecting Florida coaching searches during the post-Spurrier era. And, it's interesting because obviously Urban left on his own accord, however you want to break all that down. But everybody's going to continue to give Florida crap as being the school that post-Urban has not had a coach last longer than 4 years. And everybody's going to be talking about that year 4 of the Napier era. What I always want to know is, okay, then tell me which coach should have lasted more than 4 years. Tell me which one of these coaches Florida should regret firing. Like, who did they cut? Who did they cut the cord on too soon? Because it wasn't Muschamp. It definitely wasn't McElwain. It wasn't Ron Zook. I mean, I know that's, I guess, pre-Urban, that we're talking about there. And even Mullen, I think that had just kind of run its course at the time, too. As crazy as that might be to say, he had clearly fallen out of favor. And everything that I heard from behind the scenes was that his time was just done, and he knew it was done. What does it look like this year if it doesn't work out that way for Napier? And is this, again, going to be the thing that comes back and people are like, Florida, you know what? They're just too quick to fire coaches. Because if Napier goes 5-7, like, dude will be gone, and that's just the reality.
I agree. But the answer to your first question is 0.0. I love Will Muschamp. Still talk to him all the time. I thought he was one of the greatest coaches in terms of being a person that's ever been in here. Unfortunately, he didn't get offense, and that was the problem for him. But he needed to go. I wrote it that day that they lost to South Carolina after blowing a big lead, and they got a punt blocked and missed a kick. It was just embarrassing. And I'm like, it's time. It's time. Sorry, I love this guy. So McElwain didn't like to be at the University of Florida. He hated everything.
Very true.
Yeah. He just hated everything. He hated those meetings they used to have with all the head coaches. He was like, God, he's making fun of them and all. So he had to go. I mean, even with all that success, he just didn't fit into the culture. McElwain, Mullen, it was all about recruiting. And there were stories that got back to the AD about, the famous story is where Mullen texts a recruit, and Georges comes in and says, hey, why don't you call Coach Mullen and say you want to talk to him? Because they knew there was a secretary doing all the texting. So they call, they don't answer the phone, and that became a big deal. And that Georgia let that story go out that had happened. So, and look, that's all's fair in recruiting, right? Especially now. So yeah, he had to go too. And I mean, but you're right. If they go 5-7, which is very possible, I don't think it'll happen, but it could happen. I don't know. Florida fans are going to say, hey, look, we have given you all these sellouts in a row for teams that have been losing records, and we keep showing up. We're not showing up anymore unless you get the right coach in here, because you clearly haven't done a good job. The problem is going to be this guy has built this incredible structure, and it is an incredible structure that they have in terms of what they do with the players, what they do, in terms of nutrition, all those things. It is set up beautifully for the next coach to walk into. So if they got the right guy, it could be really special again here, because it's set up for it. But I mean, look, the bottom line is he's got his best roster. He's got the players he recruited. It's a put up or shut up for Billy Napier. There's no doubt about it.
And can't get shut out. Can't be the one to end that streak, which
no.
goes all the way back to the 80s.
I think it's 423 now, 423 games in a row with scoring. Now he's the closest that ever came to it, because remember he kicked that field goal in the Las Vegas Bowl at the end of the game, so they could get 3 points on the board. But
and I remember being there for the 2021 cocktail party when there was the rumblings. Oh my God, is Mullen going to be on the wrong end of this? And would they just fire him on the spot after that game if that happened? Like that was sort of the thing. And then obviously, they finished the game much better and avoided that. But last one for you, and it's one that, look, we have to ask every single time until we see this type of true breakthrough year, which maybe last year was and it'll prove to be, or maybe it was a one-off. Time will tell. If there's a change at Florida, who do you ultimately think would be that next coach?
Well, a lot will depend on what goes on during this season. There's a lot of guys that are going to be hot candidates, but my problem is I'm not sure that there is a coach out there who fits the culture at Florida and that Florida can afford and that wants to leave where they are. Now, this goes to NIL and stuff like that. There's a reason LSU won another national championship in baseball. I mean, that is the ultimate place you want to coach. So you're not getting anybody out of LSU. You're not getting anybody out of USC or anything like that. So I don't know who it would be. I really don't. I haven't thought about it a whole lot. I did a lot last year, but there were candidates that I thought were, I was putting guys like Jamie Chadwell in that mix and stuff, and people were telling me I was an idiot. So, I think that what they'll do is swing for the fences and end up probably hitting a double. Because that's what tends to happen. They swung for the fences with Chip Kelly, and they wanted him badly. And Chip Kelly said he didn't want to be the governor of Florida, which I still don't know what that means, but that's why he turned him down. So, but that's next time I talk to you, I'll have a name for you. I really haven't thought it through in terms of, when you see things like Belichick getting hired and Kelly leaving Notre Dame and how crazy that it's been the last 4 or 5 years. I think all the things that are going on with college football are going to kind of dictate what kind of guy you can get. Is it going to allow you to have the kind of money that you can go spend a lot of money on a guy, which you're going to have to do to get a really good coach?
Very true. Yes, we'll definitely have to revisit this subject, especially if it warrants it. Or who knows, maybe we'll be talking about a Billy Napier extension or something like that.
Is he the coach of the year?
Is he the coach of the year in the SEC? Yeah. Is DJ Lagway in Heisman contention? Yeah. Who knows?
You never know where it's going to go, and that's the great thing. As I always like to say, it's unscripted. We know what we think's going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen with anything.
It's the beauty. It's what keeps people coming back for more.
Exactly.
Pat, you're the man. Glad we got to do this. Florida fans, everybody, if you don't already, please go listen, subscribe to another duly noted podcast. You'll hear Spurrier on a very regular basis every Monday. A lot of great other guests, not to toot my own horn or anything. I may have been one of those at some point.
You were one of the best.
Few weeks.
People reacted very strong. We got Ernest Graham this week, and and I think Christy Dosh. She's coming on next week too, so she'll be great.
Friend of this show, Christy is. Yes, we'll be able to do this again. Another home and home will happen in the very near future for both of us.
I got you, buddy.
Pat, we'll do it again soon. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.